what if the reasons you just completely freeze up when you're trying to order a simple cup of coffee in a foreign language, what if that has absolutely nothing to do with your vocabulary?
Oh, yeah.
And what if it's like entirely about how fast you're breathing?
I mean, it sounds almost too physiological to be true, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah.
But we spend years blaming our memory or, our grasp of grammar, when in reality, the culprit might just be your autonomic nervous system totally hijacking the process.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. We are tearing into a concept today that, frankly, completely upends how most of us were taught to learn.
Radically upends it.
Right. We've got our hands on some truly fascinating source material today. These are insights extracted from the Learning English podcast, too. And the mission here is to deconstruct a massive psychological barrier.
And it really is massive.
It is. For anyone listening who has ever just stared blankly at a native speaker while your brain essentially flatlines, I mean, this is for you. We're looking at how to replace that overwhelming, paralyzing weight of traditional language learning with something the source calls micro habits.
The core premise of this text is profoundly liberating, actually, because it shifts the blame.
How so?
Well, it argues, and quite convincingly, I might add, that people do not fail at learning a new language because the language itself is inherently just too difficult.
Okay.
They fail because of a critical flaw in their approach. I mean, they try to master grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and real-time fluency all at the exact same moment.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because you just described, like, every single high school language class I ever took.
Oh, absolutely. The textbook method.
Yeah. You're sitting there, you're staring at a whiteboard loaded with these massive verb conjugation tables.
And you're terrified.
Completely. You have a quiz on like 50 random vocabulary words about farm animals or maybe household appliances. And the exact moment the teacher calls on you, you are just terrified of making a mistake. It feels incredibly high stakes.
Which is, biologically speaking, the absolute definition of cognitive overload.
Right.
Your working memory, it has a very strict limit on how much novel information it can process simultaneously. So when you're standing in that classroom or at that coffee shop you mentioned.
Yeah, sweating over a cappuccino order.
Exactly. Your brain is desperately trying to retrieve a specific vocabulary word. But at the exact same time, it's running that word through a complex algorithm of grammar rules you only vaguely remember. And simultaneously, it's trying to physically configure your mouth to produce an unfamiliar accent, all while managing the severe social anxiety of being judged by the person staring at you.
I mean, it's like asking a computer to run 5 massive video rendering programs at the exact same time.
Yes.
The fan spins up, everything gets super hot, and eventually this system just crashes.
The system freezes. Your brain literally throws up its hands and says, I simply do not have the bandwidth for this.
Right.
And that freeze response, that moment of total blankness, is usually the point where adults decide, well, I'm just not good at languages, and they quit entirely.
Which is such a shame. And that makes the shift in tone from our source material make a lot of sense.
It's very intentional.
Yeah, it doesn't start with rules. It actually begins by asking you to imagine sitting together with the host like a friend. It says, maybe you're lying on your bed, maybe you're walking or driving.
It's so relaxed.
Exactly. It's intentionally trying to strip away that sterile, high-pressure academic environment we were just talking about.
And that's a highly strategic choice. By setting this intimate, relaxed tone, the source is immediately trying to lower your affective filter.
Affective filter, what is that?
So, in linguistics, the affective filter is essentially your emotional barrier to learning. When stress or anxiety or even boredom is high, the filter goes up, and literally no input can get through to the language acquisition center of your brain.
Oh, wow. So you literally can't learn if you're stressed.
Exactly. By explicitly saying, we are moving away from big, boring grammar rules, the text is attempting to hack your nervous system, keeping you calm enough to actually absorb what comes next.
It just addresses the elephant in the room right off the bat. It asks the listener, do you want to speak but feel something stops you? Do you understand a little bit when you read, but when it's time to actually open your mouth, your mind just goes totally blank?
Yeah, it's speaking directly to that systemic crash we just talked about.
Right. It acknowledges the cognitive traffic jam. And the solution it proposes is radical reduction.
Radical reduction. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, if the problem is trying to do too many things at once, the cure is to isolate the variables.
Right. Precisely. Which brings us to the actual mechanics of how this source suggests we start fixing the problem.
And I have to admit, when I first read their opening directive, I almost laughed.
Really?
Yeah. It just strips away all the mental gymnastics and focuses purely on the physical apparatus of speaking. The text literally dictates that you must speak exactly 5 simple sentences daily.
Just 5.
Not 50.
Aye.
5. And the examples provided are foundational to the point of being, like, primitive.
Right. Things like, I am learning English.
Yeah. I feel good. I am trying. I am happy. I am ready.
So simple.
Right. And here is where I have to play devil's advocate for a second, because my immediate reaction reading that is, come on, 5 sentences. Sentence a toddler could say.
It feels too easy.
Exactly. If I want to be able to negotiate a business deal in London or, I don't know, navigate a medical emergency abroad, how on earth is standing in my living room saying, I am trying, going to actually help me? It feels like a motivational trick.
Just a way to make you feel productive without doing any real work.
Yeah. Just an illusion of progress.
It is entirely natural to be skeptical of this, especially if you've been conditioned to believe that learning must be painful and complex to be effective.
No pain, no gain, right?
Right. But the source is drawing a very hard line here between 2 entirely different types of memory and learning. It explicitly states, speaking is a skill, not just knowledge.
A skill, not just knowledge. Meaning what exactly, in a biological sense?
It means we constantly confuse knowing about a language with the ability to perform the language.
Okay, I think I follow.
Knowing grammar rules and vocabulary definitions, that's declarative knowledge. It's stored in your brain like facts in an encyclopedia.
Like knowing the capital of France.
Exactly. But speaking, the actual act of producing sound in real time, is procedural knowledge. It is a highly complex motor skill.
So it's physical.
Highly physical. I mean, think about what happens when you speak. Your brain has to send precise electrical signals down to your vocal cords, to the muscles in your jaw, to your tongue, yes, to your lips, and down to your diaphragm to control airflow. Every single language requires a completely unique configuration of these muscles to produce its specific phonetic sounds.
That's a lot of coordination.
It is. Your brain might know the word, sure. But if your mouth has never physically practiced the microscopic muscle movements required to say it out loud, you will stumble. Every time.
That brings up the driving analogy from the text, which I thought was just a really clever way to visualize this.
Oh, it's a perfect analogy.
It says you can sit on your couch and watch like 100 YouTube videos about how to drive a manual transmission car.
Right.
You can read the entire owner's manual cover to cover. You can know perfectly well intellectually what the clutch does, where the brake is, and how the gear shift moves.
You have all the declarative knowledge.
Exactly. But the very first time you sit in the driver's seat and actually have to coordinate your left foot slowly releasing the clutch while your right foot presses the gas,
You are going to stall the car.
you're going to stall it immediately
Yeah,
and probably panic while someone honks at you.
precisely. Watching the videos builds that declarative knowledge. But the procedural skill, the literal muscle memory, that only comes from the physical act of doing it.
Right.
The source emphasizes that your brain learns through repetition and exposure, sure, but your mouth learns only through speaking.
That explains why the text is so incredibly adamant about the volume of your voice.
Yes.
It doesn't just say, think these 5 sentences. It says you must speak them loudly.
Out loud.
It explicitly tells you, do not speak in your mind. Go to another room, go out on the terrace, go for a walk, but physically vocalize the words.
Because if you only read them silently, you are entirely bypassing the motor cortex.
You're just watching the driving video again.
Exactly. You are leaving the physical apparatus of your mouth completely untrained. By speaking out loud, even just those 5 basic sentences, you are forcing those neural pathways from your brain to your vocal cords to fire.
Okay.
You are laying down the hyaline on those nerves, which makes the physical execution of English sound smoother and faster and way more automatic.
Okay, so I understand the physical conditioning aspect. We're basically sending the jaw and the tongue to the gym for a micro workout.
That's a good way to put it.
But I'm still hung up on the vocabulary limit. Because the source follows up those 5 sentences with another really severe restriction.
The 10 words.
Yes. Master just 10 basic words a day. 10 words. And they are the most basic verbs imaginable. I mean, eat, go, come, like want, feel, make, see, work, play.
It seems totally counterintuitive when a standard dictionary has hundreds of thousands of words.
Right. Because if I only know 10 words, I can't express any nuance. What if I want to explain a complex movie plot or debate politics or complain about my taxes? I can't do that with just eat, go, and play.
No, you can't debate politics on day 1. But the source isn't trying to make you a political pundit immediately. It is trying to break that freeze response we discussed earlier.
Okay, so it's about avoiding the system crash.
Exactly. Look at the mathematical counter-argument the text provides. It points out that if you truly deeply internalize just those 10 foundational words, eat, go, come, like, want, feel, make, see, work, play, you have the immediate capacity to create over 100 functional sentences.
I guess if you mix and match them. Like,
Yeah.
I like to eat, I want to play, I go to work, I feel I want to make something.
Exactly. You are instantly communicative. The source is directly attacking the myth that fluency requires this massive, esoteric vocabulary. It states flatly, fluency is not about difficult vocabulary, it's about easy expression.
Easy expression.
Yes. When you are forced to communicate using a severely limited toolkit of highly frequent, highly versatile words, you completely remove the heavy burden of vocabulary retrieval from your cognitive load.
Right.
If you were standing in a store and you want a specific item, you don't need to search your brain for the exact translation of, I require the acquisition of this specific garment.
You just point and say, I want this.
Exactly. By limiting the options, you speed up the processing time.
You eliminate the hesitation entirely.
Right, you aren't paralyzed trying to find the perfect complex word. You are using a simple word perfectly. That frees up your brain's bandwidth to focus entirely on the act of expressing the thought and actually maintaining the social interaction with the cashier rather than buffering like a slow computer.
The source also provides a very specific mechanism for locking these foundational words in. It doesn't just say, hey, memorize them. It describes this very specific daily cycle.
The notebook method.
Yeah. Take a small notebook, write the 10 words down during the day, and then read them again at night.
It is advising you to triangulate the data in your brain.
Triangulate the data. What do you mean by that?
Well, in neuroscience, the more pathways you create to a piece of information, the easier it is to retrieve later. If you only listen to a word, you're activating one specific auditory pathway.
Okay.
But the source is asking you to combine visual memory, speaking memory, and writing memory.
So by physically writing it down in the notebook, I'm bringing in the movement of my hand.
Yes, that involves fine motor skills and visual processing as you literally watch the ink form on the page. Then, by reading it out loud at night, you involve auditory feedback and the gross motor skills of your mouth.
So it's like a three-pronged attack.
Exactly. You are creating a much denser, more robust neural network for those specific 10 words. You aren't just storing them in one flimsy file folder in your brain, you are linking them across multiple cortical regions.
Right.
When it's time to recall the word want in a real conversation, your brain can access it through the memory of how it looked on the page, or the physical feeling of writing it, or the sound of your own voice saying it.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. We are using these micro habits, the 5 loud sentences and the 10 written words, to build a physical, muscular foundation and a highly accessible, low-pressure toolkit of verbs.
That's the baseline, yes.
But here's my next massive hurdle. We've got the mouth moving, sure, but speaking in a vacuum doesn't build actual fluency. If I just say, I want to eat 1,000 times in my living room, I'm still going to be totally lost when someone actually responds to me.
Right, you need input.
You need fuel. You need to absorb the actual structure of the language to know what to mimic.
Which is exactly where the source transitions from the active output of the mouth and hand to the passive but absolutely critical input of the ears and eyes.
Okay.
The text refers to this phase as utilizing the silent inputs of listening and reading. But it redefines how we should approach them, starting with framing listening as a silent power.
A silent power. It sounds very, like, Zen.
It does.
But if we are being practical here, does that just mean I should throw on a fast-paced Hollywood action movie or a British comedy in the background while I cook dinner and just hope I absorb the language by osmosis?
The text explicitly warns against exactly that approach. It advises very strictly, don't listen to fast, difficult English right away. Start simple.
But isn't the ultimate goal to understand natural, fast-paced English? Why wouldn't I want to train with the real thing right from day one?
Because if the input is too complex, it just becomes noise. Yeah. Have you ever listened to 2 native speakers of a language you don't know at all having a rapid-fire argument?
Oh, yeah. It doesn't even sound like individual words. It just sounds like one long, continuous wall of sound.
And that is the acoustic reality of spoken language. We don't speak with neat little spaces between our words like we write on a printed page.
Right. We slur things together.
Exactly. The sounds bleed into one another. If you expose a beginner to that wall of sound, their brain literally cannot parse where one word ends and the next begins. The effective filter goes up, the brain shuts down, and absolutely zero learning occurs.
So throwing them in the deep end just makes them drown.
Exactly. That is why the source recommends slow English, short sentences, and a very clear voice. And astonishingly, it claims that just 10 minutes a day of this specific type of listening is enough to fundamentally change your comprehension.
10 minutes. There's that micro-habit concept again.
It's everywhere in this method.
But it emphasizes that it's what you do in those 10 minutes that actually matters. The text outlines a very deliberate drill, the listen, pause, repeat technique.
Yes. This is where we separate passive entertainment from active practice. The text uses a really fascinating physiological metaphor here. It says, your ears are like muscles. The more you train them, the stronger they become.
I really paused when I read that, because I've never thought of hearing as a muscular activity. We usually think of hearing as completely passive, like sound waves hit the eardrum and it just enters our head.
Right. The physical receiving of sound waves is passive, but auditory processing, what the brain actually does with those waves, is a highly demanding cognitive workout.
Okay.
When the text talks about training your ear muscles, it means you are training your brain's auditory processing centers to recognize foreign phonetic boundaries.
Phonetic boundaries, so telling where the words start and stop.
Exactly. By using the listen, pause, repeat method with slow English, you are giving your brain the milliseconds it desperately needs to identify a sound, isolate the word, and recognize the pattern.
So you listen to a short phrase.
You listen to the phrase, you pause the audio, you let the echo of that sound ring in your mind for a second, and then you repeat it. You are manually breaking down that wall of sound into manageable bricks.
So you are basically training your brain to become a better acoustic filter.
Yes!
And speaking of recognizing patterns, that ties directly into how the source handles reading. It calls reading your silent teacher.
Which is a beautiful phrase.
It really is. It says reading doesn't shout, it doesn't force, but slowly it changes your brain. And again, the instruction is highly restrictive. It doesn't say, go read a massive fantasy novel.
Yeah.
It says, start with short stories, small paragraphs, maybe 5 or 6 lines. Read slowly, and crucially, read them out loud.
That out loud instruction is totally non-negotiable in this methodology. If you read silently, you are only utilizing the visual pathway.
Which we know is enough.
Right. But the text explains that when you read out loud, your brain, your mouth, and your ears are forced to synchronize. They have to work together simultaneously.
So I'm seeing the word, I'm physically shaping my mouth to say the word, and my ears are hearing myself produce the word. That triangulation we talked about, it happens in real time.
Exactly. But here is the deepest, most powerful mechanism at play in this reading exercise. The source says that reading this way provides you with ready-made sentence patterns, so your brain can start copying them.
Ready-made sentence patterns.
Yes. This is the ultimate hack to bypass traditional, painful grammar study.
Okay.
You aren't memorizing a textbook rule about subject, verb, object order. You are internalizing the rhythm and the structure of a correct sentence through sheer exposure and physical repetition.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the source draws a brilliant parallel here that truly crystallized this for me.
The child development parallel?
Yes. It asks a rhetorical question. It says, does a child learn grammar first? No. First, they listen again and again, and then they speak.
It's so blindingly obvious once it's pointed out.
It really is. I mean, a 3-year-old toddler isn't sitting in their playroom studying the difference between a past participle and a gerund.
They couldn't tell you what a noun is if their life depended on it.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Yet, they speak with perfect fundamental grammar.
Because they have acquired the language, they haven't learned it academically. This raises a massive question about the entire adult approach to language learning.
Right, because as adults, we constantly try to intellectualize the process. We want the blueprint. We try to reverse engineer the language by studying the rules, dissecting the grammar, and then trying to build sentences from scratch using those rules.
And it is exhausting.
So exhausting.
The source is effectively telling us to abandon the engineering degree and revert to that childlike state of pure acquisition. Listen to the ready-made patterns. Repeat the ready-made patterns. Trust that your adult brain, just like a child's brain, is a miraculous pattern recognition machine.
It will just intuitively figure out the underlying structure if you just feed it enough clear, slow examples. So, practically speaking, if someone is listening to us right now and wants to apply this, How does this change their daily media habits?
It means a radical shift from passive scrolling to active engagement.
Go ahead.
If you are trying to learn, spending an hour mindlessly scrolling through foreign language videos on social media is not studying. That is just letting the wall of sound wash over you.
You're just drowning again.
Right. Instead, you need to shrink the volume and increase the intensity. Take a single 5-line paragraph from a short story. Read it out loud, slowly, truly feeling the physical shape of the words in your mouth.
Yeah.
Then, take a 10-minute slow audio clip. Listen to one sentence, pause it, repeat it, listen to the next, pause, repeat. It is highly concentrated, highly active engagement.
Okay, so through listening and reading, we are taking structured information in. Through our physical 5 sentences and vocabulary practice, we are putting information out. But here is where we hit the most critical juncture of this entire deep dive. Input and output are fine when you're all alone in your room. But the real barrier, the place where almost everyone gets permanently stuck, is what happens in the middle.
The processing phase.
Yes, how the brain handles that information internally before it sends it back out into the world. And that brings us to the core of this methodology, rewiring the internal monologue.
This is undeniably the most transformative concept in the source material. The text identifies the act of thinking in English as the ultimate game changer.
It makes a huge claim here.
It does. It states very bluntly that this specific internal shift is what separates eternal beginners from truly fluent speakers.
It perfectly addresses that exact moment of painful hesitation we talked about at the beginning of the deep dive. The text calls it out directly. It says, right now, when you want to speak, you think in your native language, translate it, and then speak. This makes you slow and stuck.
That translation phase is a massive cognitive bottleneck.
It's like having this incredibly tedious, bureaucratic middleman living inside your brain. Let's really map out what is happening during that hesitation.
Okay, let's do it.
Imagine you are at a restaurant abroad, and you just want to ask for the check.
A very common scenario.
Right. Now, in a fluent speaker, the idea of I want to pay goes straight from the brain to the mouth. No stops. But if you are trapped in translation mode, the thought has to originate in, like, the idea department.
Right.
Then it gets sent down to the native language department, where they draft a full sentence in your mother tongue. Then that sentence has to be physically routed over to the translation department.
Which is severely understaffed and operating under extreme pressure, by the way.
Exactly. The translation department gets the sentence and starts frantically looking up individual words in an internal dictionary. They're arguing about verb tenses. They're trying to apply a grammar rule they vaguely learned 3 years ago.
It's chaos.
Absolute chaos. Finally, they draft a new sentence in English and send it up to the motor cortex to be spoken. But by the time that entire bureaucratic nightmare is finished, 10 seconds have passed in silence. You look like a deer in headlights, and the waiter has already walked away.
Yeah.
That agonizing delay is the hesitation. That is the blank mind.
That analogy is a highly accurate representation of the neurological routing that is actually taking place. Fluent speakers have effectively fired the middleman. They do not draft the memo in their native language first. The visual or conceptual stimulus triggers the target language directly.
Which sounds amazing. But let me push back here.
Go ahead.
How on earth do you just decide to fire the middleman? You can't just flip a switch in your brain and say, okay, starting at 2:0 p.m. today, my internal monologue is operating exclusively in English.
No, of course not.
If you don't know the language well enough, you literally don't have the words to think in.
You cannot flip a switch? No. But you can deliberately build a new, direct neural pathway that bypasses the middleman. And the source gives an incredibly actionable, albeit surprisingly simple technique for doing this.
Okay, what is it?
It doesn't ask you to philosophize in English. It says to start incredibly small. Look around your immediate environment right now and describe the physical objects in your mind.
Like literally just naming things.
Yes. The examples the text provides are almost laughably basic. This is my phone. This is my room. I am sitting. I feel tired.
The text calls this out specifically. It says, small thinking is powerful thinking.
It is powerful because of what it forces the brain to do. You are training your brain to associate the physical, visual reality of an object directly with the English word, entirely bypassing your native language.
Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that.
So when you look at your phone resting on the table, your brain immediately wants to supply your native word for that object.
Right, the automatic response.
If you let it do that and then try to find the English translation, you are using the middleman. But if you deliberately force your internal monologue to instantly say, this is my phone, The split second your eyes rest on it, you are forging a direct connection between the visual stimulus of the phone and the English vocabulary word.
Ah, I see.
You are slowly starving the translation department of resources by just refusing to use it. If you do this with everything in your room, the chair, the window, the door, braider, you are laying the groundwork for a direct route to fluency.
You are forcing the association to happen in real time, in the real world, rather than on a vocabulary worksheet.
Exactly.
And to support that internal rewiring, the source introduces a new physical habit, writing. But again, it frames writing completely differently than a typical school assignment. It calls writing your personal practice zone.
The key insight the text offers about writing is really a matter of pacing. It states that writing slows down your thinking.
Which is exactly what you need when the translation department is panicking.
Precisely. When you are speaking to someone, time is moving relentlessly fast. You feel immense pressure to respond instantly. But when you are sitting alone with a pen and a notebook, you control the pace of time.
You can just breathe.
Right. You have the luxury of retrieving those ready-made sentence patterns you absorbed during reading. You can see the physical structure of the sentence taking shape on the page. You can spot your own mistakes without a native speaker standing there judging you.
But just like everything else in this method, it's governed by strict micro-habits. It explicitly tells the reader, I'm not asking you to write essays, just write your day.
Very simple.
The examples are perfectly mundane. I wake up at 7, I eat breakfast, I go outside. It instructs you to write just 5 simple sentences tonight, right before sleeping. And it includes this incredible, liberating line.
I know the one you mean.
No perfection, just expression.
No perfection, just expression. That truly is the guiding mantra of this entire philosophy. This 5-sentence journal entry acts as a secure sandbox.
A sandbox, yeah.
It's a low-pressure environment where you can practice generating thoughts directly in English. You can build a little sentence castle, knock it down, make a glaring grammatical error, and there are absolutely no social consequences. It removes the fear from the act of creation.
Okay, so let's take inventory of where we are. We have established our physical foundation by vocalizing 5 sentences daily. We've built our 10-word survival kit.
Check.
We are absorbing natural patterns by reading short paragraphs out loud and doing our listen, pause, repeat ear workouts.
Right.
We are actively rewiring our internal monologue by naming objects in our room to bypass the translation middleman, and we are safely experimenting in our 5-sentence nightly journal. We are armed, we are trained, and we are ready.
We are.
But all of this has been entirely solitary.
Yes. So far, the entire methodology has taken place in a safe, completely controlled environment.
Which means we now have to face the final boss.
The real world.
We have to step out of the sandbox and actually look another human being in the eye. This is where the rubber meets the road, and it's what the final phase of our deep dive is all about. Confronting fear, mastering the art of shadowing, and leveraging the mathematical power of habit.
The source is remarkably pragmatic here. It recognizes that you can practice in your bedroom for 10 years, but none of it matters if your nervous system redlines the exact moment you are confronted with a real person.
Yeah.
It tackles this head-on with a blunt directive. Speak with real people. And it immediately acknowledges the physical reality of the fear involved. It notes that your heart beats faster, you worry about your accent, you worry about being judged.
But what if they judge me? I think that is the universal fear that unites every single language learner on Earth.
It's primal.
It's the ego protection mechanism. We don't want to look foolish or unintelligent. But the source offers some incredibly blunt psychological advice to counter this. It just tells you straight up, people care less than you think.
It's a harsh truth, but an incredibly liberating one. When you are struggling to speak, you feel like you are under a massive microscope. But the reality is that the person listening to you is not grading you.
They don't have a red pen.
No, they are not mentally cataloging your incorrect verb conjugations. They are simply trying to decode your message so the interaction can proceed.
But telling someone don't worry, they don't care, usually isn't enough to actually stop a panic attack.
Yeah.
And this is where I think the text offers its most valuable physiological hack. It doesn't just offer platitudes. It gives you a physical strategy for managing that anxiety in real time.
Yes.
It states, when you speak fast, your brain panics. When you speak slow, your brain stays calm.
This is a profound observation of how our bodies react to stress. And it is deeply counterintuitive to how we normally behave.
It completely goes against our instincts. Because think about what happens when you are nervous in a conversation.
Yeah.
Your instinct is to rush.
You want to escape.
You want to get the painful interaction over with as rapidly as possible. You think to yourself, if I just fire off these words really, really fast, maybe they won't notice my terrible accent or my bad grammar, and I can escape this situation faster.
Right.
But the text is arguing that speeding up is exactly what triggers the system crash.
And neurologically, the text is absolutely correct. When you attempt to speak rapidly while under stress, your breathing pattern fundamentally changes. You begin taking faster, shallower breaths.
Okay.
This shallow breathing mimics the body's natural physiological response to physical danger. You are literally signaling to your own brain via your respiratory rate that you are under threat.
So you're inducing your own fight or flight response just by talking too fast.
Exactly. And when the fight or flight response activates, the brain shuts down access to higher order cognitive functions like complex language retrieval and routes all energy to basic survival mechanism. That is why your mind goes blank. By deliberately, forcefully slowing your speech down, the text advises starting with a simple, drawn out, "Hello, how are you?" You are manually hijacking your nervous system.
You're forcing it to calm down.
Yes. By speaking slowly, you force yourself to take deeper, regulated breaths. This signals safety to the brain, which keeps the cognitive pathways open, allowing you to actually access the vocabulary and sentence patterns you've been practicing in your sandbox.
That is incredible. You literally use the pacing of your speech as a dial to control your own anxiety level.
It's a biohack.
But the text also recognizes that sometimes, even with slow breathing, the fear of real-world interaction is just too immense. Or logistically, you might just not have a native speaker around to talk to.
Yeah.
And it offers this really clever fallback plan. It says, if you can't talk to a person, record your own voice on your phone. Speak, listen, improve.
It's a brilliant intermediate step between solitary practice and real-world conversation.
Why does recording yourself work so well? Because I know a lot of people cringe at the sound of their own voice.
That cringe factor is exactly why it works. Recording yourself mimics the psychological pressure of producing language for an audience, even if that audience is just future you.
Right.
It forces a level of accountability and performance anxiety that speaking alone in a room simply does not. When that red recording light is on, you feel a slight pressure to get it right. It simulates the stress of conversation, allowing you to practice managing your breath and speaking slowly, but without the immediate paralyzing threat of external social judgment.
So it's like exposure therapy, but you control the dial. Now, assuming we are managing our fear and starting to engage, the source introduces a highly specific technique for how to interact with real-world English media. It calls it consuming content smartly, and it introduces a concept called shadowing.
Shadowing is what bridges the gap between sounding like a textbook and sounding like a human being. The text explicitly warns against passive consumption here. It says, don't just watch and listen. Watch and listen like a learner. And the specific drill it prescribes is this. Pause the audio, repeat the lines, and this is the crucial element, copy the tone.
Copying the tone. So it's not enough to just say the right words in the right order.
No, because words are only a fraction of the language. The text makes a beautiful point. You are not just learning words, you are learning how English sounds.
Right.
Every language on earth has its own unique musicality, its own rhythm, its own physical posture. Some languages are staccato and front-heavy in the mouth. Others are very melodic and resonant in the throat. English has a very specific stress-timed rhythm.
So when you shadow, you are basically acting.
You are playing a role. When you shadow a native speaker, you aren't just repeating the vocabulary, you are physically mimicking the musicality of their sentence. If their voice goes up at the end, yours goes up. If they elongate a vowel, you elongate it.
You're trying to be an imposter almost.
Yes. You are training your vocal cords and your mouth to adopt the physical posture of that specific language. This entirely bypasses the need to study dense phonetic charts or rules about intonation. You learn the music of the language the exact same way a musician learns a song by ear, by mimicking the sound until the physical muscle memory takes over.
Okay, so we have all these tools now. We are shadowing the music of the language. We are managing our fight or flight response by speaking slowly. We're recording our voices. But the ultimate question for any learner is, how much of this do I actually have to do?
The schedule.
Right. What is the schedule? And this brings us to what I think is the most important mathematical and psychological argument in the entire text. It's the rule that governs everything else. Make English a daily habit.
The source makes a definitive, uncompromising claim regarding scheduling. It says 10 minutes daily is infinitely more powerful than 2 hours once a week.
Let me push back on this because it feels like it contradicts a lot of what we know about deep work or getting into a flow state.
Okay. Well, if I only study for 10 minutes, by the time my brain finally shifts into English mode and I get focused, my alarm goes off and I have to stop. How can 10 minutes possibly be better than sitting down for a solid, uninterrupted 2-hour block of intense focus on, say, a Saturday afternoon?
It is a totally valid question, but it assumes that language acquisition relies on the same mechanisms as writing a term paper or solving a complex math problem.
Does it not?
No. Those tasks require deep, sustained analytical focus. But language acquisition, as we've discussed, is heavily reliant on procedural memory, pattern recognition, and neural pathway reinforcement.
So the rules of engagement are different.
Entirely different. When you try to study for 2 hours once a week, you are adopting the skyscraper approach we talked about earlier. It becomes a monumental, exhausting task. It requires immense willpower just to sit down and begin.
That's true.
And biologically, the spaced repetition effect proves that your brain does not retain a massive data dump efficiently. You cram for 2 hours, but by Tuesday, those neural pathways have already begun to decay from lack of use. And if you are busy on that one Saturday and you miss your 2-hour session, the guilt is overwhelming. You feel like a failure, and that makes it twice as hard to start again the next week.
Exactly. But consider the 10-minute daily habit. The barrier to entry is practically non-existent.
Right.
Everyone has 10 minutes. You can do your 5 loud sentences and review your 10 words while you are waiting for the coffee machine to brew in the morning. It requires 0 willpower.
It's just a tiny blip in your day.
And from a neurological standpoint, by touching the language every single day, you are constantly sending a signal to your brain that this information is highly relevant to your daily survival. You never give the neural pathways a chance to cool down or decay. You are keeping the network constantly warm.
The text uses a great phrase for this. It says, even on busy days, do 5 minutes, but never break the chain. Consistency is the real magic.
The chain is everything. That daily frequency builds a psychological momentum that completely neutralizes the fear of failure, because a 5-minute task is simply too small to fail at.
English is not a subject. It is a habit. I really think that line is the thesis statement of this entire approach. It completely reframes the endeavor from an academic burden into a simple daily hygiene routine like brushing your teeth.
It is a brilliant reframing, and if you follow this system, the 5 sentences, the 10 core words, the out loud reading, the active listening, the internal rewiring, the shadowing, and the relentless 10-minute daily chain, it all builds toward one final vital ingredient.
Right.
But the source makes a very controversial claim about this ingredient. It says it must actually come last, not first.
Which brings us to the culmination of our deep dive, the final realization from the text. The concept of confidence.
Think about how we usually view confidence in relation to a new skill. We'd almost always treat it as a prerequisite.
Right. We tell ourselves, I just need to build up my confidence first.
Right.
Once I memorize all these grammar rules, once my pronunciation sounds perfectly native, then I will finally have the confidence to go out and talk to people. We view confidence as the entry ticket to the arena.
And the source flips that entirely on its head. It recognizes that waiting for confidence is an endless trap, because perfection is impossible.
It calls confidence your final weapon. And it delivers what might be the most liberating sentence in the entire text. It says, without confidence, you will stay silent even if you know English perfectly. But with confidence, even broken English sounds strong.
Even broken English sounds strong. That is a profound realization about human communication. Have you ever interacted with someone who spoke very limited, heavily accented English, but they spoke it with absolute conviction, eye contact, and a smile?
Absolutely. You don't even notice the grammatical errors. You were just engaged with their energy and their message. You respect them for making the effort.
Exactly. The text is pointing out that communication is largely nonverbal and energetic. The radical idea here is that action must precede confidence.
Action first.
Confidence is not a prerequisite for speaking. It is the byproduct of speaking. It is the psychological reward you receive for taking action despite the presence of fear. You speak slowly, you survive the interaction, the person understands you, and that survival generates a tiny drop of confidence.
And to help generate that first drop, the source gives you a literal mantra to use whenever the fight or flight response tries to creep back in. It tells you to explicitly tell yourself, I am learning, I am improving, I'm not afraid.
A psychological anchor.
It's almost like a spell you cast on yourself to keep the nervous system regulated.
If we look back at the entire journey this text has mapped out for us, it is a truly remarkable architectural redesign of how to learn. It takes us from the absolute isolation of speaking 5 basic sentences to an empty room, to physically training the muscles of our ears to parse sound, to actively firing the bureaucratic middleman in our internal monologue, to bravely managing our breath and speaking slowly with strangers.
It's a complete system.
It is a holistic system built entirely on micro-movements. It removes the crushing weight of traditional expectations and replaces them with relentless, microscopic daily actions.
The host of the source material ends their message with a very direct, unyielding call to action. They say, look at yourself, not the old you, the new you. You now know what to do, how to do it, and why to do it. Don't wait for tomorrow. Start today.
A powerful ending.
And they actually demand a public commitment. They ask the listener to go to the comments section and type a simple promise. I will start today.
That act of typing it out, of making a public commitment even to strangers on the internet, is the very first step in taking action before confidence arrives. It is putting a stake in the ground. It is the beginning of the chain.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to mull over. We've just spent this time proving, through the lens of this source material, that mastering something as overwhelmingly complex as a completely foreign language does not require a massive, painful life overhaul.
Not at all.
It doesn't require innate genius or hours of grueling daily study. It simply requires a relentless sequence of 5-minute micro-habits. If rewiring the fundamental neurological pathways of how our brains process human communication only takes identifying objects in a room and speaking 5 simple sentences out loud every day, what else are we drastically overcomplicating?
That's the real question.
If the insurmountable mountain of a new language can be leveled just by moving one tiny pebble every single day, what other seemingly impossible skills or dreams in your life, whether it's finally learning to play an instrument, writing that book, pivoting to a new career, or getting in shape, are not actually mountains at all? What massive life changes are just sitting there waiting for a tiny 10-minute daily habit to finally unlock them?